The convent's bells echoed through the hills that evening, ringing out for the final time. In the rugged landscape of Thessaly, winds made the olive branches quiver. Inside a weathered chapel, a circle of nuns gathered together. They bowed their heads beneath ancient murals where the saints' eyes had faded, their faces almost erased by time. Out on the skyline, flames danced in the distance. The bold flags of the Ottomans were already coming into view. Their red banner swept across the ridge like the first sparks of a coming blaze. The sisters knew with a heavy certainty what was coming. No messengers arrived with warnings. No troops lingered to protect them. Only a heavy hush hung in the air like the silence before invasion. Sister Eleni of Lissa, their abbess, stood before the altar. Her fingers clutched a silver crucifix, a relic that had survived countless storms. She spoke softly, "If these walls fall, let your vows stay deep within you where no one can touch them." It was hope against hope. Because when the Empire's forces burst through their gates, history made one thing clear: promises and sanctity were powerless against the threat of erasure. If you're intrigued by the stories from the tumultuous Ottoman-Byzantine borderlands, consider subscribing. Your support allows us to uncover more forgotten tales hidden in old archives, from missionary journals to papal letters. Now, let's return to our unfolding story. As evening approached, the convent's stone walls began to crumble. The melodies that once filled its corridors fell silent, drowned out by the clash of metal and cries of despair. The Ottomans showed no respect for sanctuaries. Why waste arrows when cannons could speak far louder? The thunder of artillery at the gates was more than a threat. It was a warning that this place was no longer separate from the world outside. To the Ottomans, this wasn't a sanctuary. Instead, it was a stubborn outpost, a clear sign that, on land claimed by the Crescent, the cross still dared to remain. Inside, the nuns hid slender chalices, embroidered icons, and even small relics, tucking them beneath chapel stones. They hoped that if their lives were taken, some part of their faith would survive. The invading soldiers weren't searching for gold or jeweled treasures. They came seeking something deeper, undeniable proof that they had destroyed not just their enemy's resistance, but even the faintest whisper of their God. As night fell, the surviving nuns found themselves gathered beneath the open sky, surrounded by flickering torches. Flames cast shifting patterns of gold and shadow across their white habits. Their captors declared that they would be brought before the pasture, a vow from which, in these times, almost no one ever returned. What happened next faded into legend. The horrors were so unspeakable even church historians hesitated to write them down. When dawn broke, the once sacred convent was in ruins. Smoke drifted up from the destroyed refectory, where friendship and quiet prayers had once filled the air. Ottoman banners now flew above the bell tower, signaling surrender to troops far and wide. But amid the destruction, something extraordinary happened. Instead of cries, the soldiers guarding the courtyard heard a haunting chorus. The survivors' hands bound with rope began to sing. It wasn't a song of mourning, but a hymn of defiance. They sang the Agnus Dei, the ancient plea to the Lamb of God. Despite fear in their voices, they sang on, strong and unwavering. Faced with this unexpected act, the Ottoman commander hesitated, torn between mockery and violence. At his order, the abbess was pushed forward. Even then, Eleni held tightly to the silver crucifix she had saved from the shattered altar. The Ottoman captain offered what he called mercy. If she would renounce her faith and accept the creed of the conquerors, he promised her sisters would be spared. Eleni's reply was simple and final. "My life has already been surrendered. What more can you claim?" For a moment the captain paused, perhaps uncertain, perhaps struggling with something left unsaid. He gave his orders and walked away, leaving her at the mercy of the soldiers. What happened next vanished into silence, unrecorded, and even hidden in Ottoman writings that usually celebrated their victories. There, it was mentioned only as punishment for those who refused what they called reason. But over time, our story began to spread westward in hushed whispers. Letters and reports carried her name, Eleni of Lissa, the woman who would not kneel. By midday, the bell that once called the faithful had been melted down for currency. The chapel cross was taken east, a trophy of victory. Stories quickly spread through nearby villages. Some said that at night, the wind moving over the ruins carried the echoes of women's voices, not cries of pain, but steady, unwavering prayers. The ashes in Thessaly were hardly cool when the surviving order faced a new trial. 22 women, stripped and shackled, were marched south toward the distant coast, guarded by Ottoman soldiers on horseback. Their journey was just one more shadow consumed by the growing empire. These women weren't considered prisoners of war. Instead, they stood as living proof of the empire's victory, a reminder that even the most sacred places could fall. The journey was harsh. Blistering sunlight beat down on the dusty road. The nuns, unused to life outside their quiet convent, struggled, worn down by hunger and thirst. When one of them collapsed, her companion gently removed her veil, determined to shield what dignity she could from the soldiers' boots. In a world that showed no kindness, it was a small act of rebellion. Though their abbess was gone, her final words stayed with them. If you can't hold on to the cross, hold on to each other. After a grueling week, the exhausted captives were finally brought to the harbor town of Volos. There, Ottoman ships waited grim vessels built for dominance, not comfort. The sisters were herded aboard and chained by their wrists to thick wooden benches, seats once meant for criminals and slaves. As the sails unfurled and the wind carried them out to sea, Greece slipped away behind them, taking with it everything they knew. Overseeing the voyage, Yusuf Agar kept meticulous records, listing the ship's cargo, spices, fabrics, silver, and now, for the first time, entries marked simply for religious captives. It was that same meticulous ledger, discovered centuries later in the archives of Istanbul, that proved this saga, once dismissed as myth, was grounded in sobering reality. The journey to Constantinople took 12 brutal days. Furious storms battered the ship and salty winds reopened every wound. Hunger gnawed at their faces, draining the very life from them. Yet worse than the physical torment was the crushing sense of isolation. Orders were barked, never spoken. Their captors addressed them as if they were already just shadows. There was no comfort, only the emptiness between sky and sea. At night, Sister Magdalena, the youngest among them, would softly murmur psalms, her voice barely audible above the roaring waves. Yet others who were shackled, Greeks, Serbs, Italians, forced into bondage, would tilt their heads just to listen. In those brief moments, even the ocean's fury seemed to quiet. Finally, as the ship entered the Bosphorus, the nuns saw Constantinople's legendary silhouette appear through the mist. Its proud domes and slender minarets blazed with the light of the new day. The sprawling city pulsed with possibility and power, long celebrated as the world's most desired city. But now, this legendary city would become their prison. As soon as they arrived, they were led away from the busy docks, marching through winding alleys filled with merchants' guards and other captives. People in the crowd paused to watch. The sight of Christian nuns among the prisoners was rare even here, in a city shaped by constant conquest. Guided past the weathered walls of Blachernay, they moved closer to the heart of imperial power, the very place where destinies were decided without mercy. And there, beneath the towering shadow of Hagia Sophia, once a great center of Christian worship, they were ordered to kneel. As the muezzin's call echoed from distant minarets, one of the sisters whispered, "This was our home, but it belongs to us no longer." Before sunrise, they were led into a grand marble courtyard lined with soaring pillars. This was no dungeon. It was the Divan-ı Hümayun, the imperial council where the sultan's will held absolute power. Here, justice wasn't delivered by kings or priests, but by the relentless machinery of empire. For these nuns from Thessaly, it was their faith set against the granite laws of conquest that would be put on trial. In the heart of the chamber, the Grand Vizier presided. His face was unreadable like a stone mask of authority. Nearby, clerks sat ready with quills and paper, prepared to record every detail, names, ages, and the intended fate of each captive. These records were meant to endure, and after centuries they remained stained and brittle at the edges. The sisters, their robes torn and ragged, kept their eyes fixed on the floor. Through interpreters, the decree was delivered. The Sultan, they were told, would show mercy, but only to those willing to renounce their faith. If they converted, they would be given new identities, a place inside the palace walls, and the promise of a future. But if they refused, they would face something called the discipline of faith, a term that hovered somewhere between imprisonment and simply vanishing. Not a single nun spoke. Sister Magdalena fought back a tremble. She had seen this ordeal before: Greeks, Armenians, and Slavs disappearing after standing right here, swallowed by the silent reach of the empire. As the soldiers stepped forward to pull her from the line, one of the elders, Sister Daria, quietly stepped out instead. Sister Daria stood before the vizier not as a defeated captive, but with the calm dignity of someone who had seen empires rise and fall. She spoke. "My lord, you may call us by any name you choose, but the prayers within us are beyond your reach." The translator hesitated, carefully considering the risk of repeating her words. When he finally translated, the vizier's expression remained unchanged, showing no sign of emotion. His reply was quick and cold. Prayers vanish when lips forget their shape. With a gesture, he ordered the sisters to be taken away. This was not a death sentence, but an exile to the lowest chambers of Topkapi Palace, where those who didn't fit any category were hidden from the world. Some would later claim this was an act of mercy. Others, disturbed by whispers, believed it was even crueler. For these sisters, their new prison wore the mask of duty. Beneath the palace's manicured gardens lay a winding maze of stone corridors, sealed off from sunlight by heavy doors. Each cell offered only a narrow slit for light, just enough to blur the line between night and day. The sisters were stripped of their habits and dressed in coarse clothing. Their new role was declared: they would scrub stone floors, mend linens, and stoke the palace fires. The intent was clear: to erase their sanctity and reduce them to mere laborers. But the Ottoman rulers had underestimated the women of Thessaly. These nuns were no strangers to silence, self-denial, and hardship. Hunger and loneliness had long been their companions. Suffering was woven into the fabric of their lives. Down in those shadowed corridors, their discipline became their shield. Night after night, they whispered their prayers in secret. One woman dragged a nail across damp clay, leaving the mark of a cross. Another traced invisible scripture into the dust beneath her straw mattress. They began marking each passing day, not hoping for rescue, but following the rhythm of the muezzin's call. It was a bold act. Not an act of conversion, but a way to hold on to their faith in a place meant to strip it away. Whispers soon spread among the palace staff, stories of silent women locked deep beneath the gardens. Prisoners who neither pleaded nor spoke, but whose presence lingered like a ghostly echo. Some whispered these women were cursed, others dared to call them saints. Their silent presence echoed through the labyrinth, more powerful than any bowed head or whispered prayer. Time moved slowly, days blurred together, months stretched on endlessly. Their hands grew cracked and raw from endless scrubbing, polishing brass, and tending fires. The warmth they created reached only those above, never themselves. Their real names were lost by order, each sister called only by a number, a mark of ownership within the empire's machinery. The authorities believed hunger and the slow grind of time would break down even the hardest devotion. Then came the next trial, the one disguised as mercy. Generosity came in small parcels. Plates of rich food would appear, oil for lamps, and the feel of silk brushing against rough sleeves. Gentle scholars arrived, speaking softly, offering rest, comfort, and glimpses of freedom. They reassured, "Your God and ours are not enemies," one imam declared. "Adopt our language and your chains will fall away." But beneath every offer was an unspoken demand to surrender the memory of their old lives. Giving up their identity was the one boundary they would not cross. Where Sister Magdalena once seemed fragile, she now became the pillar everyone gathered around. Sister Magdalena became their quiet anchor, softly murmuring scraps of scripture she once recited within the stone walls of her convent. These were half-remembered lines and fractured verses, now woven together into new prayers. Even in pieces, her words felt like lifelines pulling them through the darkness. But when gentleness failed to bring surrender, the authorities dropped their pretense. The lamps were extinguished, rations grew meager. Promises of comfort vanished with the turn of a key, replaced by oppressive silence and darkness. One by one, the nuns were called to a cramped chamber where scribes waited to record their words. Each person was ordered to repeat a short declaration of submission. Those who complied were allowed to move freely among the palace servants. Those who refused simply disappeared. The empire didn't rip faith away all at once. Instead, it wore down resilience slowly through starvation, through endless waiting, and through a whisper of doubt that lingered in their minds. Why suffer for a silent God? Some could take no more. Two sisters from Corfu, identical in both face and fate, finally whispered the words, They were dressed in luxury and led away, never seen again. For those left behind, every disappearance only hardened their resolve. Sister Daria, who once stood boldly before the Grand Vizier, slowly faded away. Her body grew thin, her cheeks pale and ashen. When the guards demanded her name, she simply smiled and replied, "My name is Silence." That act of defiance swept through the entire group like a fever. From that moment on, not one sister spoke to their captors. Whenever questioned, they answered only with silence. In that determined hush, they reclaimed the agency the Empire thought it had taken from them. The archives barely registered their existence, just a line here, a footnote there. To the palace officials, they were the failed ones, those who refused to bend. In the longer view of time, they stood as living proof faith surviving in places no walls or chains could ever reach. By the time blossoms once again brightened the palace grounds above, only 11 of the original 22 sisters remained. The guards began to call them phantoms in tatters. Palace workers told different stories. On certain moonless nights, they whispered. Muffled voices rose from deep underground, singing prayers in a forgotten language, haunting the memories of even those who tried not to remember. It was the same melody they had sung when flames consumed their convent, now echoing in darkness instead of the open air. Deep within those sunless passageways, the survivors discovered something they never expected, a forgotten archway, sealed for years and buried beneath layers of dust and stone. What started as a simple refuge soon became a sacred sanctuary. They repurposed broken shards of pottery as candle holders and draped a frayed strip of linen over a flat stone to create a makeshift altar. From the remains of a shattered mirror, they pieced together a rough cross. Each night, after the palace above grew quiet, the sisters slipped into this hidden chapel. There were no grand hymns or sermons, only soft, hushed voices. Each woman knelt and offered a memory like the bell from her childhood church, the savory comfort of bread stewed warm before sunrise, or the trembling details of a home lost to invasion. These memories became their psalms, tokens of faith whispered to a God who listened, even in the deepest parts of the earth. A Venetian captive once wrote about hearing haunting melodies drifting up from the harem's floor, women's voices chanting in Latin, sending prayers to a God unknown to the empire that held them. For generations, scholars dismissed these stories as mere legends. But then, beneath the shattered ruins of Topkapi Palace, archaeologists made an incredible discovery, a modest chamber. The walls were covered in unmistakable Christian engravings, crosses hastily carved, and a nearly faded Latin inscription in tenebris lucet. The light shines in the darkness. This was real evidence that the sisters' devotion had endured through time. Their story changed everything. These women were not erased from history. Instead, they had left a hidden rebellion carved into the very stones. Within those secret walls, Sister Magdalena was no longer frail. She became the very heartbeat of their faith. Using bits of charcoal, she left marks where she could. Since she couldn't write names, she drew symbols, a bird for every sister who was still alive, and a flickering flame for those they had lost. When no new bird appeared, the others mourned in silence. The authorities never discovered the hidden chapel, but beneath the surface, something began to change. The nuns grew stronger together, their unity unbreakable, a quiet transformation that their captors noticed, but never truly understood. Despite constant hunger, biting cold, and walls that seemed to close in tighter with each passing day, the sisters moved with a calm composure that unsettled their captors. The overseers called it madness, but the palace scribes, watching carefully, saw something else entirely. These women had found a strength that reached beyond normal endurance. Their secret gatherings continued, month after month, perhaps even for years. In the end, the hidden chapel stood as their ultimate act of defiance. There were no swords, no open rebellion, just an unwavering devotion that could never be stamped out. When a new sultan finally took the throne, only a handful from the original group remained. They were aged, diminished, and nearly forgotten by time. Yet hidden from sight and buried beneath the palace's grand foundations, their sanctuary endured silent and untouched. Generations went by. When modern archaeologists finally uncovered the layers of empire covering Istanbul, they revealed the last remnants of these women. Despite all their suffering in the shadows, they left something behind that no conqueror could ever take, their unyielding faith, etched forever in stone. By 1482, the palace was under new rule. a young sultan rose to power, determined to erase any trace of weakness left by those before him. He demanded strict record-keeping. Every worker, concubine, and servant counted and listed, all except for one elusive group. In the Topkapi archives, pages are crowded with names. But then a strange emptiness appears, a gap where 21 names should be. The ledger marks them as unfit for service, disposed of. No dates, no graves. Just silence. In this way, history didn't destroy these women, it simply left them unwritten. And that empty space speaks volumes. Only deep shame can demand such secrecy. Centuries later, the silence began to break. In the archives of Bursa, a courtier's diary surfaced, using careful language to describe foreign women unyielding and unbending who disappeared beneath the palace stones. In 1484, a Venetian dispatch intercepted by spies spoke of nuns who refused the Sultan's command. When pieced together, these fragments reveal a hidden reality, a truth the empire worked hard to conceal. This wasn't just neglect, it was a deliberate erasure, the silencing of women who became living symbols of resistance and faith. The last known account of Sister Magdalena surfaced decades after she vanished, mentioned by an Italian pilgrim. He recalled a palace servant who quietly spoke of a woman who sang prayers to her God until, one night, the guards locked her away. Her true name was forgotten, but the soft hymns she hummed seemed to linger, weaving themselves into the very walls. In those haunting echoes, her legacy remained. Over the years, the tales of the missing sisters did not fade away. Instead, they grew into ghostly legends, passed along by whispering slaves and cautious servants. On nights when the moon was high, a chill would fill the palace's lower corridors. There, a faint scent of incense lingered, though no flame ever burned. Memory, myth, and stubborn truth refused to fade. Centuries went by. European travelers, hoping to uncover the secrets of the Ottoman court, heard whispers of these stories. In 1712, a French envoy recorded that among the oldest palace servants, one forbidden tale lived on Christian women who had sung themselves out of their chains and into eternity. He dismissed it as legend, but the silent stones had already revealed what words tried to conceal. The secret chapel stands shattered now. Its ceiling is gone, yet the carvings still cling stubbornly to what remains. Faded prayers, nearly erased by time, line the walls, a breath from all the women who refused to be forgotten. Silently, they continue to speak. If this story has reached you tonight, let it linger. Share your thoughts below. Tell us what you felt, seeing what they endured. For those drawn to the untold, the hidden corners of history, join us. Subscribe for more stories that dare to bring shadows into the light. Some truths are meant to endure no matter how hard others try to silence them.